So this is segment number 2, and we are going to look at the pre-scene in a more closer sense. Now, obviously, what we did last week was we established a thorough understanding of the pre-scene, how we looked at, in fact, our focus was the industry. So we looked at the residential heating industry as the pre-scene presents it to us. Of course, we supplemented it with YouTube-based videos and curated content through the research folder. But overall, the pre-scene was quite clear in establishing that fundamental understanding of how the domestic heating industry worked. So we looked at the why residential heating is important. We looked at the boiler aspect, how boilers are being used in this case, which is one of the main products that Hottayr is manufacturing, that your company is manufacturing. We understood what kind of mechanism is being implemented there. We also looked at heat pumps, which was a more, it was a really a much closer look, a much deeper look, because heat pumps are a very important player or important element of the domestic or the residential heating industry. And what we have is we had to understand that there are 4 components to it, and it's basically a mechanism, unlike boilers, which is based on combustion. So you're actually burning something to create the energy that is required to generate the heat. But what happens with heat pumps is that it captures the energy outside or in some location, in some space, and it transfers that energy to somewhere else. So with heat pumps, what you're seeing is the reverse of air conditions. So you basically have heat pumps that can do both. Heat pumps that can capture the heat outside and send it to a house inside, or a heat pump that can capture the heat inside the house and send it outside and making the house cooler. So you have reverse heat pumps, which has, or what we generally call hybrid heat pumps. Then we looked at heat distribution mechanisms, what kind of technology is being used, the piping, the radiation, how the radiators work, underflow approaches, by the wall methods, etc. Alternative heating was looked at. The global picture, which the pre-scene has presented, was looked at. And finally, we started slowly looking into Norland, which is your particular market, which is the country that you're operating in. It has very specific climate conditions. That's basically what we work with. All right. On that note, today, our focus is predominantly on Hottayr. So I'm going to spend about maybe close to 1 hour, less than that, roughly. We are going to look at the Hottayr company. But before that, let me take a few seconds. Let me give you a few seconds to read the context statement, which is actually different from what used to be, right? So this is the first time we are seeing this context statement. Please take a moment to read it. All right, so we are aware that there has been and remains a significant amount of change globally. To assist with clarity and fairness, we don't expect students to factor these changes in when responding to or preparing for case studies. This pre-scene and its associated exams while aiming to reflect real life, are set in a context where current and ongoing global issues have not had an impact. Remember, marks in the exam will be awarded for valid arguments that are relevant to the question asked. Relevant to the question asked. This is something I highlight throughout. You have to like really deeply connect with relevancy of your answer, of your response. Answers that make relevant references to current affairs will, of course, be marked on their merits. So basically what they're saying is, yes, globally, you've got the Russian-Ukrainian war, you've got some situations going on in the Middle East with Iran in chaos and, some stuff like that. You've got inflation all over the world, which is okay, which is perhaps something general and which is something, but the current phase of inflation that we're actually facing is something unprecedented and something that everybody seemingly doesn't have any control over, right? It's happening in the developed countries. It's happening everywhere else. You have the impact from Brexit and the fallout. You're seeing that, and you're seeing certain cracks in the United Kingdom. You're looking at issues in China. You've got trends like quiet quitting and things like that. So there are very few countries at the moment. There are very few countries at the moment who are, kind of stable. You've got a lot of the developing nations going through like really tough times, really hard times. All right. So what they're basically saying is, yes, sure, but you cannot really take those as serious, impactful considerations when you're writing your answer. You have to try and, because that will basically, it will skew your answer in extreme directions. So you don't want to be extreme where you write and where you think. You want to be, quite normal. You want to be quite in a neutral place. All right. On that note, let's see. Hottayr. So we looked at the overview of Hottayr, and what you are seeing here. And I'm basically just repeating some of the basic stuff. Let's see. Okay. All right. Finally, I think we're good. Okay. So established in 1952, quoted in 1967. So within a span of 15 years, they were able to quote themselves in the stock exchange. They are also in, let's see, go to reading view. They manufacture domestic heating products, gas boilers, and air source heat pumps. They were able to become one of the largest manufacturers of gas boilers and also export. So you're basically dealing with a multinational company and you're the senior finance manager. You have two factories, dedicated factories for two products, one for gas boilers and one for heat pumps. The head office has a separate location in the central city, 2,600 administrative and management staff. So basically, you're looking at a very established, very old, well-reputed entity. Now, on that note, the mission is to establish yourself as a trustworthy supplier. Sure, obviously, as a business, that's your ultimate aim. You want to be trustworthy. You want to be able to draw customers again and again. The vision is to drive yourself toward a zero carbon world. So if you're basically manufacturing products that involve combustion, then you're going to have some trouble, right? So what we are basically trying to do is we're going to be in line with, because when we looked at Nolan government's vision, they have a 2040 net carbon zero target, right? So a zero carbon target with the government. So aligning ourselves with that sort of government and national vision is perfect, and it's a great thing to do. Core values: you keep your promises, You understand the needs of your customers and you're responsive to it. And that plays a big part, as we will see as we go along. Constantly striving to enhance your products. You make them safe, efficient, and economical. People trust and respect one another in the company, and it's a safe and healthy place to work. So basic core values. For Noora, I think, who just joined, Noora, we moved on from an introductory phase, just having a chat. And this is basically the second segment. We just started looking at Hottayr. So I just looked at like a couple of slides. So you haven't really missed much. Basic introduction. So just ease yourself into the discussion and you should be okay. All right. So in addition to that, what we need to understand is the leadership of the company. So you have the executive team, which is comprised of 5 members. Dr. Evadi Walder, Bogdan, Elaine, Emmanuel, and Amina Rajab. And the 4 of them have 4 different sets of portfolios. And you can really relate to all of them because they make sense. The only thing that is a little troubling is that the chief finance officer is in charge of IT. So you don't really have a person who is committed to IT. Now, of course, you might think that, all right, so we are a manufacturing company, so why it's fine, the CFO looking at IT. But I really feel a disconnect because even though we are a fundamentally manufacturing company, we also have moved into or ventured into recent data related or cyber related matters. Especially there's a point where you will learn that our heat pumps have the ability to connect to Wi-Fi devices at houses. And through the Wi-Fi devices, there is a sort of digital mechanism that tracks the heat. So there is data collection. And on top of that, it means that every house that is connected to our heat pump, every house's Wi-Fi system or Wi-Fi network that is connected to our heat pump creates a wide network. And that definitely exposes us to different ways of hacking and, exposes the client and the customers in fact, to hacking, and we are also connected to that. So it's a multi-node system. In such a case, we have to be like really, really careful. So that's just one point we'll look at. However, otherwise, they seem to be very experienced. The descriptions and their basic backgrounds are given in your pre-scene, so you can take a look at it. Further, if you look at the non-executive committee, again, there's one thing. We have 4 members here, not 5. As opposed to the executive team. And the other thing is, sure, we have got all the independent committees, audit, risk, remuneration, and nomination. All of these are highly recommended by the Corporate Governance Code of the UK. However, one thing that we noticed that Martin Gregory, the chairman, is sitting in the audit committee. Now, that's, of course, something to be a little concerned about because but there can be, which we will look at as we go along, there can be a justification behind this as well, but we'll see. All right, so that's what that's just entering the discussion because we looked at those things and we had that understanding last week itself. Now we are going to take a deeper look, a much more closer look, and from this point onwards I would request all of you to like pay close attention. We are basically, the objective is by the end of this segment, you and myself, of course, but you will have to have established a thorough understanding of our business, of Hottayr, right? A very deep understanding of Hottayr, what we are good at, how we have established ourselves, etc. So that's the objective here. Firstly, we are going to look at demand trends faced by Hottayr. A few things. Okay, so you know that we started ourselves in 1952. We quoted ourselves in 1967. Sure. Throughout the span of these last 50, 60, 70 years, we have faced certain demand trends. Now, the first one is that before 1970s, the demand for central heating slowly grew, although it was not common for central heating to be installed in new houses until 1970s. All right. So central heating is basically having one heat source to one house, one building. That's central heating. So even if you take an apartment complex with 30 or 50 or 100 or 200 units, you're basically talking about one central source of heating, one central maybe boiler room. So it can have multiple boilers, but one central source of heating that drives the heat throughout the entire property. So central heating only became a thing, a trend, slowly by 1970s. That's roughly 20 years after. And by that time, one thing you have to notice that Hottayr was well established. By that time, we were really ready to face this. In fact, you could even say that we were one of the initial companies to really drive this trend, because we were one of the initial companies to start working on central heating systems. So that's one. The second is post 1997, right? After 1997, one thing that was considered risky was heat pumps. And demand was very limited to heat pumps, but there was growing concerns about emissions and the need to protect the environment. So what happened was, there were early adopters, right? By 1997, okay, this is like roughly 50 years after we started the company, there was a slow upheaval of an interest toward heat pumps. Again, what we noticed is that we were ready. We were an early mover. We were a first mover into this space with the consciousness of environment, with the consciousness of, greenhouse gas effect, the human based, the deliberate greenhouse gas effect, etc. Rising. We were again very much ready with a product in hand, ready to go. Okay. The third is another trend that we are looking at, and another thing that drives our manufacturing decisions is that as far as heat pumps are concerned, I told you, heat pumps mean you're not generating heat. You're basically capturing heat from one place and sending it to another place. Now, when you capture heat, you can capture heat from air. You can capture heat from ground. You can capture heat from water. We call these different, if you would have gone through the research content, you would notice a couple of documents that had all these different examples. So you call them air source heat pumps, water source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps. There are electric source heat pumps. There are hydrogen source heat pumps which are being currently looked at. So all kinds of this. Now, Hottayr, we manufacture only one type of source heat pumps, and that is air source, which is basically placing your evaporator just outside, right? What you generally see with any building which has a heat pump, you see a mechanism, which I showed to you last week. So the evaporator is outside and we use air source. There's a reason to this, which is that there is insufficient demand for ground source heat pumps because of the investment. And also there's a practical issue because not every person has a large enough maybe backyard or yard to place a well spread and high space enabled ground source heat pump, right? So we are using, or we are manufacturing, because of these two factors, we are manufacturing only air source heat pumps at the moment. The final one is export sales. Our export sales are limited. Understand this. It's very commonsensical. It's limited by the fact that many countries have warmer climates. So we can only cater to countries that are in the temperate, that have a temperate climate, that have, seasonal variations. They are cold during some part and they are warm during some part. There's like summer and winter. So only to those markets. But slowly what's happening is, I think with global warming, to be really honest, even some, tropical climates are slowly becoming temperate, right? But I don't know the effects. I don't know how it's going to affect the world. I used to be just until a while ago, I used to be from a tropical climate. And now I'm experiencing the temperate climate. You would notice my clothing as well, which is I must ask for your forgiveness for this attire. However, I'm trying to deal with the climate as well, because I'm not very I guess I'm not very good with the cold. Anyway, so these are the demand trends, and In all these cases, we have seemingly reacted well. That is the important thing. These are the information that you're going to use when you're writing your answer, right? Because you're developing a background about your company. You're understanding here that we are early movers. We have the first mover advantage in both the products that we manufacture. We are limited by the climate of markets that we are operating in. So it's very difficult to enter a market which has just a steady climate. And we also manufacture only ASOS heat pumps. Okay, the second aspect is really the set of milestones. In response to these demand trends, the set of milestones we are looking at, right? It builds a good, very strong picture about Hottayr. That I must say. We are one of the first companies to specialize in boilers for domestic heating systems. Okay. We are the first domestic boiler manufacturer to receive a safety award from Nolan Gas. First manufacturer, right? And they have very, very high standards. Right? The pre-scene is making it very clear. So we always have established a track record of exceeding those standards. Further, all right. The first domestic boiler manufacturer to offer a 10-year guarantee for its boilers, right? We are the first domestic boiler manufacturer to offer a guarantee. Probably, after winning the safety award, it would have been nothing. It would have been like the normal thing to do. Boiler designs have constantly evolved to use less gas. Our boiler designs, right? They use less gas, which makes them cheaper to run and which makes them relatively environmentally friendly because they're using less gas, right? So yes, still combustion is involved with boilers, but more effective, more efficient, I suppose. We commenced production of heat pumps in 1997 at a time, right? At a time when demand was not that great, which was actually considered to be a risky venture. So we have that as a very, very strong, label in our collar. One of the first domestic heat pump manufacturers to offer the option of reversing the heat flow. So one of the first to offer the hybrid model of heat pump, which can do both. It can heat a house during the cold and it can cool a house during the summer. We have patented several features that enables our boilers to create more energy from burning a given volume of gas and also waste less heat in bringing water up to desired temperature. Again, there are so many patents which speak to the track record of innovation of our company. Right? Several features. Installers often recommend Hottayr's boilers. I suppose among all of these milestones achieved, the last one is the best because that is what generates the top line of the company. Installers often generate our boilers and possibly our products because of the excellent reputation for quality and efficiency. All right. So these are very important because it builds a very positive picture about our company. Have these in the back of your mind always, because you never know when you might be able to use one of these points when you're writing an answer, especially in a situation where you have to justify the strength of the company. That brings me to the next, which is Hottayr's customers. Who are our customers? We are dealing with three groups. The first is energy providers, right? Basically companies like Nolan Gas, which supply and install central heating systems for homeowners or house owners or apartment owners, residential market, right? Companies that manufacture and install central heating systems. Two large house building companies. Basically, these are like large zones which have identical houses built continuously. And I've actually been fortunate enough to like really see it with my own eyes, what we are talking about here. There are a few cities around Toronto here that have that sort of thing, and I had never really seen it before. So other than movies, I think I remember seeing one when I was young in a Steven Spielberg Indiana Jones movie. I was thinking, what's going on here? Does it really exist? Like all of the houses exactly the same. So looks like house builders, house building companies, large ones, they undertake contracts and they do this kind of thing. They build housing estates. They may have hundreds of homes, and they are one of the main customer groups for heat pumps, because house builders often install heat pumps in new homes under construction, and that's the current trend. What we are looking at is, as much as possible, currently, house builders are installing heat pumps rather than gas boilers because of all kinds of, environmental consciousness, long-term efficiency. If you look at the long-term cost as well, there are definitely benefits of it. So they have a tendency to go for heat pumps. That's a good thing. And installers often recommend our boilers as well. So whenever boilers are being considered, these installers tend to recommend our products. The third group of customers are builders, merchants, right? Basically, people who are suppliers to these builders. They provide wholesale services for smaller businesses such as plumbers, heating engineers, and small house builders who do not order in bulk. So you basically have the large groups of and the large scale customers who are energy providers and large house builders. And you also have the medium to small range businesses. And what you're looking at here is that our business is predominantly dealing with a B2B model. We don't really see a B2C approach yet. We're looking at business to business. We don't have the end consumer in the supply chain or the value chain. And that is a point to note, because it could also be a good thing. It could also be a bad thing. And those implications are things that you might consider and you might look at, or even the examiner might test, especially in terms of, what if, can we switch to retail, right? Can we offer, what if we come up with a system where we locate or we place retail sales outlets all over the country. We launch with 100 outlets, just placing the basic products that a house owner personally and individually can come and check out. And you have those kind of locations, right? You can place your products in retail outlets which do multiple products and multiple brands as well. So different options available. Okay, who are our rivals? What is our competition or the competitive landscape? Two main rivals are noted in the pre-scene. One is Thermwick, and this is a direct competitor, right? This is a competitor that actually, as far as the pre-scene is concerned, we are pitched against. They're based in Norland, so home country, and they sell boilers and heat pumps that are slightly cheaper and slightly less efficient than Hottayrs. So they're not really up to our league, at least that's their strategy. They're probably catering to a lower end, low budget market. And their products, if you think about it, are the same. They manufacture boilers and heat pumps, but the products are slightly cheaper and slightly less efficient, right? Slightly cheaper and slightly less efficient. We have to look at the financials to really understand the implication of this, which we will see. The second is Flownis, so FLW, largest manufacturer of boilers and heat pumps in Eastland, not Norland, Eastland. And the $E is their currency. Just remember that right away. It's a temperate zone country with a climate that is colder than Norland's, right? So probably a bigger or better market. If we can, because with colder, right, what you have to understand is when we looked at Norland's climate, we realized that temperatures don't really go below 15 degrees Celsius, right? And that's a very safe zone for heat pumps, actually, when you place the evaporator out, because practically nothing really happens and there's enough heat to capture as well. But if it gets colder, if it hits minus 15, minus 20, minus 25, there are practical issues with, with the propellers getting catching the sort of getting stiff, and the mechanisms not really working well. snow flooding the evaporator mechanism, the housing, all kinds of things, because the level of snow as well, the height that the snow can fill itself to, there can be like really, really tough days. So it can really flood the mechanism. So with colder climates, you have to have better equipped products and products that have harder resilience against that climate. So high quality, I suppose. So are we really a manufacturer that can cater to that? That's a question that we can ask ourselves. And Flownis seemingly is a company that does that. They also export their boilers to the countries in which Hottayr makes sales. So they are also multinational, and they are also selling Noland, right? They're selling here. So they are an international player in our country. Their products are comparable in terms of quality. Now, that's the point that I wanted to capture, because as I said, because it's a colder climate, you need to really have a high quality product. So what this proves is that our products can withstand colder climates, at least the climates that are a little colder than Norland, like Eastland. If not, we wouldn't be able to sell there. And Flownis is also selling here. So they're competing with us in multiple markets. And something that is common to both of these companies is that they are both more heavily focused on boilers than Hottayr. So when you look at Hottayr's revenue distribution, you note something that we are, and we will look at it when we have a look at the financials, but looks like we are doing better in heat pumps than boilers. That's something we are able to gauge. We started early. That's one point, right? And perhaps it's a good thing. Perhaps we are pushing more on heat pumps, right? Which we don't really have an idea too much about. But our competitors currently are more heavily focused on boilers. Just keep that in your mind, understand that, because that can have an implication to how the competitive landscape is measured. Perfect. Okay, now you realized when we looked at the milestones we have achieved from the beginning, you realized that the fundamental driving factor for our success, or what you could even say critical success factor, has been quality. There is a really, really serious commitment to offering great quality in our products. And throughout the pre-scene, when they talk about this, there are a few words that are used to represent this commitment to quality. And these words are what you see on the screen: safety, reliability, efficiency, product development, consumer feedback, and product features. Safety, reliability, our products are safe, our products are reliable, we offer good efficiency, we are focused on product development, right? We don't really lag behind. So there's R&D work happening. Consumer, our current CEO, I believe, is also someone who was heavily involved in that space. Consumer feedback, we give great heed to consumers, and the product features, like, the Wi-Fi point that I mentioned. So quality is like a really, really important thing. Just remember these words, because you can freely use these words, right? When you're writing your answers, do not be afraid. Do not hold yourself back if you have to justify the fact that we can come back strong, or we are strong because our products are of great quality. If you can justify that, and if you have to, just remember these words, bring them into your answer. No problems at all, right? Because these are words that the Hottayr brand is synonymous with. Okay, now let's try to expand on this idea. What does the pre-scene say? One, there are very, very strict standards governing the safety of gas boilers in Norland, and Hottayr's policy has always been to exceed those standards. So standards, we meet them, we exceed them. Our boilers rarely break down, provided, of course, that they are properly maintained. In fact, the proof is that our boilers last an average of 15 years compared to other boilers, which last on average for 12 years. And that's a big deal, right? That's a really big deal, and a really good, strong point or strong gap to have, right? A very good lead to have as far as the product lifetime is concerned. Our boilers create more energy, so it's lasting longer while also creating more energy, while also creating or wasting less heat. So very efficient. And most of our production processes are automated, and a large proportion of the factory workers in the two factories, boiler factory and the heat pump factory, are working on quality management, quality control, quality assurance. That's actually a good thing, because what you're basically looking at is when you walk into a factory, you have a lot of the repetitive, the same type tasks being done by machinery, whereas the people, the human element, is focused more on the quality assurance aspect, the quality control aspect. So that's like a really good thing, because it's the people who can really, do the sample checks, maybe, random ones, improvements, continuous improvements, problem issue resolution, etc. You can have the whole thing about lean manufacturing and the Toyota production system, the TPS system that is being used in globally many factories, like even European car companies from Chrysler to everyone is using that world-class manufacturing, the Kanban system and the Kaizen system and the 5S and the whole thing. And we have serious attention to product development and improvement. Obviously, when they say improvement, I believe we're talking about continuous improvement, Kaizen, in fact, right? So these are like really, really positive points that speak to how focused we are. And what has it done? What it has done is it has elevated the reputation of Hottayr. Seriously elevated the reputation of Hottayr. How am I saying that? And you have to remember this. Because the installers often recommend Hottayr's products. If the installers are often recommending, and they are very, very clear about it, they say, because they recommend because of our reputation upon the great level of efficiency and quality of our products. So very, very strong picture so far, right? Okay. Further, we pay close attention to consumer feedback, particularly with regards to whether their heat pumps are providing sufficient hot water and whether they are maintaining their houses or homes comfortably, right, in terms of temperature. Obviously, that's the main point, right, that we need to be focused on, because we are into domestic heating, and if our products don't really do the job, it's going to be an issue. So we are always keeping track. Feedback is an important element of ongoing product development, right? In fact, with residential heating, it's very, very important, because you never know how these things can really play out. I've been experiencing the effects of a central boiler system where I live in. This place is powered by a central boiler, and I was able to check out the boiler room as well, which is like huge. And I seriously see and note how important it is for for consumer feedback to be considered. And another great thing, especially I think in the case of heat pumps, is they are quieter in operation than most competing brands. Now, you would have noticed when you're walking by the side of a heat pump, even if you have it installed, if you have like individual units in your houses or homes, the evaporator can create havoc. Right? It's a motor, it's a propeller, so it's turning, especially if it's not efficient. And I really noticed people sometimes just have to get used to it. Right? There's no way around it. Right? You just have to get used to it and live with it. But our products, our evaporators, are quieter in operation because the electric pump used to drive the flow of refrigerant must be running whenever the heating is switched on. So that's when you see the motor working. And that being quiet is a great thing, because especially in locations where you don't have good insulation against sound, right? Where sound easily travels, basically, it's when you're trying to sleep, you're trying to, work, you're trying to focus, all of that can be disrupted. And the only way out is to get used to it. So we have a product that doesn't have that issue. Most competing brands looks like they have it. Again, very positive. All right. Now, the other aspect is, how does technology come into play? You notice that the CFO, the chief finance officer, is in charge of, nominally they say, is in charge of IT. Now, okay, how does IT play a role in our company? Our heat pumps can connect to consumers' home Wi-Fi, right? A great point of cyber risk, right? Because basically you're basically saying that our system is connected to the network of, because our heat pumps are connected with probably our servers, right? Central servers of Hottayr. So there's a connection there. And the heat pump in itself is connected to the consumer's Wi-Fi. And the Wi-Fi connection is connected to the internet service provider of, whoever is providing services. So that's like you're basically connected to the grid. So that's like, perfect situation for cyber risk. And an app, all right, add to this, a mobile phone application in the smartphone can connect to the, can track this data. So it is definitely connected to the heat pump as well, right? This is like the perfect network. The data is automatically uploaded to Hottayr. We use it to monitor the use of and performance. As we said, consumer feedback, whether it's deliberate feedback or whether it's collected like this, by this kind of means, automatically. Both, you would have noticed Microsoft Office is always giving out this message about diagnosis data, right? So they want to collect and they want your permission. So if you don't give permission, they still collect, but not because in the terms of use and the terms of agreement, you have signed to provide a certain amount of data. So that data is every time, whether you submit, whether you agree or not, that data is automatically collected. So we are collecting this data automatically. The Wi-Fi connection is also used to upgrade and update the operating software, like how what Tesla does with their autopilot. And many systems, I suppose, if you have activated automatic updates. And these upgrades and updates to operating software, like, Windows 10 or whatever, for heat pumps, it improves their efficiency. Consumers can decide whether or not to activate this connection. And there is a data center in the head office, as I said, which is supported by a remote backup site. So we don't know whether this remote backup is like a hot backup or a cold backup. We don't know to what extent. And I think that's a good move this time, because they can easily bring in the word cold backup and put you in a situation where, the risk is that we didn't have a hot backup site. We didn't have a live backup. We had a backup system which backs it up every month. So in the middle of the month, something happens. We don't have 15 days worth of data. Now, what are you going to do? Something like that. So by bringing in remote backup, by limiting themselves with that phrase, they're giving you freedom to study different kinds of backups available and be ready for any situation. Perfect. IT staff provide programming and data management. And basically what they mean is that we have in-house IT. We are currently not outsourcing it. Generally with IT staff, unless it's heavily technical, you can think of, or you can consider outsourcing, which is an option. They're keeping it open. And also, there are implications with regard to cost and how much we are paying these people, the amount of staff members. And even if we were to outsource, the implications of, letting them go, what kind of impact it can have socially, reputationally, etc. So all those factors come into play. Very standard stuff, in fact, in a case study. On that note, we are moving. Okay, so that was a deeper look, right? That was a deeper look. And I really hope that by now you have a proper understanding of, why we are so good at what we do, how we have established, how we have faced demand trends, the nature of the decision making we have, the focus and the commitment on quality and efficiency, and how we have developed such a great reputation over time. the kind of risk-taking nature, but how it has actually yielded back to us, the rewards, all of this from a really thorough point of understanding, because you have to it has to be natural. When you're facing the case study exam, don't try to, memorize these points. Have a very natural understanding of, all right, so this is my company, this is what we've done. We started ourselves in 1952 and we've been doing really well. How have we been doing really well? We've been focused on quality. We've been looking at consumer feedback. We are heavily into product development. We are collecting consumer data. We have a central data system. We have in-house IT, and we've been the first to get an award. We've been the first to give guarantee, 10-year guarantee. So just have a very natural understanding. That's the best way to deal with it, because it's effortless then. As I said earlier, right? You're supposed to write a practical answer. So when you feel natural, a natural familiarity with the company, it automatically comes, thinking of points, which is, let's talk about it in the writing session. The points for your answer, they just, they keep coming, right? That's the learning I got from personal feedback I've had. And that is what we are trying to develop this time. So please make sure that you have a very natural understanding. And that marks the end of the deeper look segment. And we are going to switch to the financial highlights.